From porn to pop culture, music to memes, grabbing a partner by the neck has worked its way into bedrooms around the world. But it wasn't always this way. Join us as we trace the origins of this new phenomenon, how what we're seeing today is unique from the breath play of the past, and how getting rough in the bedroom can leave lasting physical and emotional damage. If you're lucky enough to survive, that is. Join us as we explore sexual strangulation, what it means for us, and what it says about us. That's what you're in for today on Impolite Society.
Oh, I just detest rude, unladylike young ladies.
I hope you don't mind me being a tad rude.
I myself am strange and unusual.
Don't be rude.
That is some weird, wild stuff.
Shocking, isn't it?
It's a scandal!
But it's provocative.
Please stop making me blush.
Welcome to Impolite Society. I'm Rachel.
I'm Laura.
And oh, look, I got a question for you today. Have you heard much about choking in pop culture lately?
Dude, how can you miss it? But really, I try to cover my ears and kind of la 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 whenever people mention
You
it.
shut it down.
It really does. It gives me the serious icks. And one of those things that I just choose to ignore and shove it to the back of the brain. Don't examine it. Danger lay beyond this point.
Have you ever had anybody talk to you about it like in person?
Not explicitly, but it's kind of mentioned in passing, or I can tell kind of their thoughts on it based on how they might react to certain things that I say. I don't know how to describe it, but
It's never come up verbatim though.
No. Mm-mm.
Oh,
None of my girlfriends have been like, oh yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I remember one night when I was fresh out of college, meeting up with friends for drinks. We're like walking out to the car, and everybody's pretty tipsy at that point, ready to call it a night. And two of the friends that I was with were just gushing about how much they like to be choked. And I was just there.
And you're just like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Really? Yeah. And that was kind of my first this is something that people I know actually
What year
do.
was this? Curious.
I want to say probably 2016, 2017.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's kind of when it took off. Today, It feels like it's everywhere. Last summer, you couldn't even open your For You page or old school turn on the radio without Jack Harlow singing about being vanilla but still wanted to choke you, baby. I also remember, it was probably around the time of that happy hour with friends, I remember Ali Wong had a Netflix special where she joked about it, saying...
The one where she was pregnant?
I mean, there's two where she's pregnant. I don't know which one it's in.
Okay.
But the joke is along the lines of talking about rough sex and saying, I don't want to die, but I also don't want to be so sure that I'm going to live either.
Oof.
And of course, there's endless memes online that fall into the running bit of hashtag choke me daddy.
This is why I hate the internet and why I'm not aware of any of these, because I fucking hate the internet culture.
You can't live under a rock entirely. Like, it creeps into your day-to-day life.
Yeah,
and
totally.
we're gonna get into
now I'm
that.
gonna see it all the time, right? Because I was hearing about it.
You said it out loud, and so now your phone has heard that.
Or
Yay.
no, I'm just gonna there might be things
it.
that I'm gonna notice it now because previously I've been la 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 la.
Yeah, and it made me think, what is going on here? Like, with the memes and the references in pop culture, like, is this just like a joke? Or like my friends were talking about, is choking the new hot thing to do with your lover? And that is what we're talking about today. But before we dive in, let's cut the crap, guys. Because you thought this was going to be a fun, cute episode. Things about to get serious.
Things are about to get taboo. We're taking it down. We're giving you the real.
And the real is you're not going to hear that cute little CH word anymore. No, we're going to call it what it is. Strangulation, sexual strangulation, sexual asphyxiation. Does that sound less erotic? Good. Because this is a heavy topic, guys. This is not some cute little internet meme. It's unsettling when you pull back the curtain, as we are so apt to do here on Impolite Society, so buckle the fuck in.
Little behind the scenes, Rachel texted me and was like, oh, God, I was going to do choking, but it's really bumming me out. And I was like, yeah. I was surprised that you thought this would be a light one.
Because the memes.
I guess. And I was like, if sex sounds really bummed you out, this is 1,000 times worse because no one ever died from moaning too loud.
But neighbors have been woken up, so.
It's the real tragedy. It's, hold space for them. Hold space.
Yeah, it's like you're going to your eternal slumber and I'm being aroused from my very limited one. So come on, guys.
Think of others.
So let's get into it. 20 years ago, sexual asphyxiation was very unusual, and that's across all demographics, and that includes the kink space. But that has changed radically in the span of just a few decades.
This is not the kind of progress that I was hoping for when we went into the 21st century. I don't know about you. The vanillification of weird sex shit, it's not really progress, in my opinion, but it seems like that's really the only track that we're on, right?
Right. And again, I didn't even have this in initial research, but young people's idea of what rough sex even entails has shifted so far in like one generation where it used to be spanking was considered rough sex, hair pulling.
Yeah.
And
that's when I started having sex. Like that was rough sex.
I want to live in a world before the internet where I could just like make love. That sounds great. And nobody was coming. No, just kidding. Okay, let's get to it. Because one of the earliest cultural touchstones in mainstream of like erotic asphyxiation was a 2011 episode of Showtime's Californication, where it was still very much a taboo and it focused more on the autoerotic side, which I feel like we think of a lot. Kind of our first introduction to this is like, oh, this is something you do by yourself and you can accidentally kill yourself.
Men, yeah. And I remember that show. I didn't watch it, but I know David Duchovny is hot as fuck. And I think he was a sex addict in that show, if I'm not mistaken.
I had to look up the plot, and it's, surprise, surprise, about a male writer who gets a lot of pussy. What? That's breaking some new ground there. I mean, come on,
David Duchovny. Ow, ow!
I don't know anything about
At least back in 2011.
I don't know what a David Duchovny is.
You've watched fucking X-Files. Mulder. No, Fox. Fox Mulder. That's his name. Go ahead.
Either way.
His first name is Fox.
It feels beneath him.
Okay.
But from that first, like, kind of introduction where it was a butt of a joke, essentially, it's grown a lot in our pop culture world. And that can be traced back to the big daddy of all kink BDSM media, that kinky fanfic turned main stage act. You know the one. 50 Shades of Grey. I think that's a reaction that a lot of people on opposite ends of the spectrum.
That I say that because the writing was shitty. I tried to read it. It should have been totally up my alley. I thought the writing was just plain bad.
Yeah, that's fair. I've never read it. Is it any better than Colleen Hoover? No. Am I a judgmental asshole? Yes. I can't start giving my thoughts about modern literature, especially literature that's written for women, because I will alienate the small percentage of female listeners we have. Unless you're also pretentious like I am, and then welcome. Let's share a brain. But 50 Shades of Grey has been pinpointed and argued for as kind of that mainstay that brought BDSM, kink, and, of course, choking, it's like right there on the poster, into the mainstream.
I feel like this came into the lexicon of sexuality before 50 Shades of Grey. 50 Shades of Grey came out in 2011, but I don't know. Time is wonky for me, right? When was 2011? 5 years ago? 30 years ago? I truly don't know anymore. Everything seems upside down. It seems like it happened before that, but maybe it's just been so permeated for so long, it just seems that way.
I definitely had a similar opinion as well, which we'll talk about in a second, but I think it was just a little bit earlier. So the bell curve, right?
Yeah.
It starts down here, and that started a couple decades ago, right? Early 2000s. Then you're seeing it in Californication, which is like an edgy sex show on HBO.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, it's in a major box office movie.
Well, and book, that happened years before that.
Yes. Yeah. So it's kind of that growth phase. And
Got
then
it.
50 Shades of Grey is where it tipped to being mainstream.
Got it.
So mainstream, in fact, that by 2019, a high school girl was being choked in the pilot of HBO's Euphoria, and nobody batted an eye.
The pilot. They didn't even have to lead up to it.
We're like,
I
what
hate
kind of erotic situations can we get teen girls into? That definitely won't not help our TV show.
Woof.
And it didn't stop there, because we've seen young women choked in a variety of shows, including the opener of The Idol. And it even worked its way into our problematic fave, Tina Fey's writing. She puts it as the punchline of a joke in her new 2024 Mean Girls.
Problematic my ass. I will go to the mat for Tina Fey. End of story. Continue.
I mean, she is Liz Lemon, where her intentions are good, but she misses the mark.
Exactly.
Like all of us white women.
Like a human being. What?
But I Googled it, the joke, because I watched it, and it's so permeated.
You didn't even recognize it?
I did not clock a choking joke in the movie. I had to go back, and the joke was during sex ed, the gym coach says, first we'll learn about abstinence, then condoms, then choking.
That is a very Tina Fey joke, too.
It is. It is. And it just kind of shows a little bit about who the audience for this kind of sexual behavior is. Ugh. And we're going to get into that. Ugh. And it seems like this has been kind of the perpetual state of sex. Sex has always involved choking. I don't know. I'm a frog in the pot that's been turned on to boil. I haven't noticed how much it's crept into my ideas of sexuality, because I've heard all of these references and none of them made me clutch my pearls, right? But that got me thinking, what if my 15-year-old self had heard these? And that was, goodness gracious, over 15 years ago. And I think if you had started talking about choking to 15-year-old Rachel, she would have had a different reaction than 32-year-old Rachel, who's like, whatever, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. I know my 15-year-old self would be shocked as hell. Or, now that I'm really thinking about it, I probably would have actually been shocked, but then pretended not to be shocked and pretended that I was cool with it, because then I'd assume that it was just a normal thing that people did. Thus, I think where we have landed ourselves right now.
Exactly, because that's the nature of teenagers.
Yes.
They don't say, oh, God, what I perceive everybody else to be doing is weird and different and wrong to me.
And I'm going to say that.
Yeah, I'm going to vocalize how I feel juxtaposed to my peers. No, they're going to say, yeah, I choking so hot. I've been choked thousands of times.
I love it.
It's so fun to feel like I might be dying. And this is actually very fair to bring up the idea of us as teenagers reacting to it, because sexual strangulation and rough sex is a craze disproportionately affecting the young. Mm-hmm. So a study of 5,000 students at an anonymous Midwestern university found that...
What's this, Mizzou?
Probably. We know how they get down there.
Truly.
But I don't think Mizzou really counts as a Midwestern university. They're thinking of like legitimate Midwest, like where there's snow on the ground. Because I think Mizzou's also in the Southeastern Conference. So we're a part of the South, y'all. Yeehaw!
Sorry, I'm not in on collegiate nonsense.
Well, a study of 5,000 students at this anonymous university found that 2/3 of the women have had a partner strangle them during sex. 1/3 has had it happen to them in their most recent encounter. And of the women who had experienced strangulation during sex, they said that the first age that they experienced it was between 12 and 17.
Jesus.
That's 40% of those women. So 40% of the women who had been strangled during sex, it happened before they were 17.
Jesus.
And that's up. That's almost double from 1 in 4.
It's so sad. And not
They
only
never had regular sex.
Yes, can't you wait until sex gets a little boring before you start doing stuff like this?
You gotta master the fundamentals before you start getting fancy.
You have to crawl before you walk, before you run. Like, these fucking baby sexual toddlers are getting up and trying to run a 5K and they're like knocking into the walls and shit. Like, slow your roll.
And the sad thing is that we have no idea why. There is no way for us to understand why these children are trying to strangle each other. And
We
during
don't?
the act of making love.
We don't?
No idea. Blind.
No way to know.
No way to know. But we kind of know. 3 guesses?
Porn.
It's porn. Come on. Duh. It's porn. A study in the Journal of Sex Med found early porn use and partaking in rough sex to be linked together. Especially
What?
if you're having sex with men, right? So lesbians, y'all safe. You got to figure it out. Good for you. But if you're fucking a man, the odds are if you watch porn, that fucking is going to be a lot rougher than what it would have been otherwise.
Yeah.
And that's if you're a lady, and that's if you're a man. Moral of the story, don't have sex with men if you don't want to be choked. And it's not uncommon for us to see behaviors normalized in porn and then move into the mainstream media, as we talked about, right? It may be when the internet started needing that super stimulus to keep people coming back to their sites in the early 2000s, that began to bleed over into media in the mid to tens, whatever.
Poisoned the well.
Right. And so that kind of feedback loop is then what bleeds over into our bedrooms or dorm rooms, as we find out, of what people are actually doing. We're not trying to be like anti-porn people here. We all know that correlation does not equal causation. So some argue that porn doesn't change all of our inherent interest in what we like in sex. It just simply shows us all the different ways that one could have sex, and then we gravitate to the things that we like. And that's like literally the most generous I can be about it.
Bull fucking shit. I won't be generous about it. It's bull fucking shit. We are shaped by what we consume.
Nah, that's really interesting to hear, because when we first started Big Talk, you did not think that.
No, I definitely changed. I still think that people have the power to say no and make a determination about what they want. People still have that power. But unfortunately, over time, I've realized that not a lot of people have that level of self-awareness. And it's just monkey see, monkey do. That is who we are. We're social creatures. That is how we operate. So, yeah.
I mean, one could argue that that's not the case, right? It's not that our only depictions of sex that we see are a specific, very specific kind of way that then influences how we have sex, right? No. It's just that the depictions that we see are unlocking our secret fantasies that we've had all along.
Oh.
Right?
What a genius idea. That's definitely what's happening.
Right. And in that sense, porn has set us free to choke the women partners that we have, because women are by far the most likely to be choked in porn, right? It's like,
what? I've never seen it the other way.
well, because probably I haven't watched a lot of gay porn.
True,
but
fair.
I mean, there's women who do choke
I want to see
men.
women choking men. I want that to be the next thing.
Oh, that's out there for sure. But it's just not quite at the same rate as the other way around.
I mean, I think that's really kind of a darker way to look at it, truly, though, that we needed this to set us free in our dark desires. That's a lot darker than monkey see, monkey do, in my opinion.
Yeah, we all just really want to hurt each other.
Yeah, exactly. That's
deep
our
down,
darkest
and we're like,
desire.
wait a minute. I like how that man is making that woman cry.
Yeah.
Maybe I should try that the next time I bring home a drunk co-ed.
You're gonna make me cry.
Yeah, don't think
Not
too much
for
about
sexual
it.
satisfaction, just because I'm sad.
Oh, don't cry. That's what they want.
Good point.
And so we're, again, in that feedback loop where the internet is influencing the media that we create, where thousands and thousands of memes and artwork exist that depict choking of women, I'm sure, and men, and also children, as the article that I read said.
I don't want to know. Move on.
I'm not digging into it. Exactly. No. A lot of people who are in positions of vulnerability are being choked by people who have physical power over them.
Yeah.
Not only is that depictions out there and like kind of romanticized through that content, but there are also tons and tons of jokes about celebrating choking, like wanting to be choked, jokes about the outcomes of choking. So even if you never touch a tube or a hub in your life, like if your internet browsing does not take you there, you are still going to be hit over the head with messaging about sexual strangulation, and you're going to think that this is a normal part of sex.
Because you're a dumbass teenager, like all of us fucking were.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We're so easily influenced by the sway of others around us. But, I mean, let's be so for real here, because if you're being strangled because of porn, like, that's one thing. Like, that's almost like, okay, I give you credit because at least you're reenacting what you see. If I find out that you're being strangled because you saw it in a fucking meme, like, that's just embarrassing. Like, that's, like, do better. Like, I don't let memes tell me how to live my life, let alone how to fuck people.
Well, you're also not 15 or 12.
That's fair. You know, all those 12-year-olds, they need to be a strangling. It's sad. You laugh because there's nothing else you can do.
Truly. You can laugh instead of crying.
Because these kids, they don't stand a chance, man. Like, being a teen is supposed to be about being awkward and learning of the basics and finding out what you like, not just reenacting the same violent script that's in literally every video on every porn site.
You're right. They're so fucked. And I don't even want to examine it. La, 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 la.
But you can't. You, as parents, we have to prepare for this. I know. It's like, can you all stay toddlers forever?
We'll get there. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Well, they say the average age they learn about sex happens at 6.
Oh, well, learning about sex is one thing.
But
2 years from
pornography
now.
is the main sex educator in our country.
Nope, not in my household.
We're on the cusps. It's like it's going to be here before we know it. So
I know.
That's what this episode has taught me. It's not going to change anything about my life.
Yeah.
Because I'm not getting strangled left and right. If I'm being strangled, it's an emergency situation.
Call 911.
I don't care. Okay, sorry. We're going to get into it. But before we do, we're going to talk about this prevalence of sexual strangulation. And I'm going to get on my feminist soapbox here, folks, because we all know it's scripted. We're reenacting porn. Like, porn has taught us how to view sex, and we're reenacting that. And that aside, whatever motivates women to want to do it, turns out it isn't actually providing any additional gratification. What? Because orgasm rates amongst women, especially young women, have not increased, nor has the orgasm gap disappeared among heterosexual couples, the most likely to practice sexual. It indicates that they're not doing other things to enhance female arousal or pleasure, says Dr. Debbie Herbernick, who is the foremost American researcher on sexual behavior and the lady behind a lot of this campus research that I am citing here today.
Preach, Dr. Debbie. Because we can talk all fucking day about sexual liberation, and I do it because it makes me feel good. Nah, bitch, it doesn't. Because if you're not coming at the same rate that he is, it's not making you feel better. You do it because it makes you feel better because you like to be liked. And who do you want to be liked by? Men. You are such a pick-me. Just kidding. This is a great way to retain our female audience.
I know. I'm
like,
sorry.
You're a pick-me.
Because odds are they're being strangled. We all know people in our day-to-day life who are being strangled on the reg.
Yeah, and I can't believe that I do. Like, just because of like
they're out
females that I surround myself with.
They're being strangled. That's why I only hang out with women who have necks, the girth of which a regular man cannot fit his hand around. And that's how I know you're strong.
I'm not going to say that everyone is a pick-me. I don't like assigning.
I think every human is a pick-me.
Exactly. That's exactly what
thing.
I mean. It is. That's how we are. I'm just saying people like to be liked, but if you just need to examine your choices and what are you giving up to be liked, and you need to examine it with a microscope, which is what we're trying to do here.
And we're going to talk about what you're giving up. But before we do, I'm going to, all the angry clack, clack, clacking of keyboards that I know is going to be coming, because surely now you're saying, oh, erotic asphyxiation has been around such a long time. Oh, it's part of the kink community. Rachel, you must be a hater. You must be a kink shamer. You must hate those in the BDSM community. And I just want to say, first of all, you're wrong. Sexual strangulation has not nearly existed at the same sense for any amount of time as it does today, right? It's always been kind of a one-off, real, specific proclivity that not a lot of people hold. And also, mostly solo, guys. So, I mean, it's probably better to have a backup buddy.
Truly, yeah. It may be better. But I thought it was, the original is like the dude alone with a belt. Right. Not women.
And it's transitioned onto it. And that's the depictions you see of it in history are solo.
Yeah.
And as for the kink and BDSM, here's another surprise, guys. I feel like I'm pretty pro kink, right? I'm like, you got to do what you got to do. And as long as it's not hurting anybody, that's fine. You do you, honey, boo boo. In fact, there are many who are into the act, which I will have to say here is never safe. It's never safe to constrict somebody's air. That being said, there are folks who do it who claim there is an art to it, who claim that they can do it in a way that is safer than just going in blind, right? And the way that they do it can create effects that feel nice. There's no denying that outside of being liked by boys, there are other things that sometimes people like the head rush of coming back to consciousness or staying alive. I like staying alive personally. But the people who do this within the realms of BDSM and kink, they have a specific technique that they train in, right? They call it an art. It's something that they practice and something that they do. And it's about cutting blood supply to the brain. They call it a blood choke. I just threw up a little in my mouth. Sorry. But the blood choke, that's what they do, which creates this sense of euphoria as opposed to crushing your windpipe, which just creates death, right?
Exciting side effect of death.
But here's how what's happening on the pop culture side being different than that very specific niche BDSM kink community. One, it's not breath play. The strangulation that's going on amongst young heterosexual people is not breath play. It's about domination, right? Because that's what they're seeing in the pornography. Mm-hmm. And that is also what I see in defense of it online, where people say, well, people shouldn't call it quote unquote choking because it's really not that. It's really just placing a hand on somebody's throat.
I was going to ask that because that was what I thought that it was, but I wasn't sure.
Yes. And I believe that is the case. But also when you're doing that, it's really easy to lose track of what your hand is doing. I think a lot of people, fair. Yeah, you don't have fine motor skills in the throes of passion. We've covered that in some episode. You lose access your senses. Yeah. You get so hyper focused that just having the hand there in general, even if it's just to put it, you're going to end up squeezing, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And to be fair, that's not breath play either. It's not like.
So why are you doing it?
Right. It's not even about bringing kink into it. It's very different than what would be going on in the dungeons around the world. At least I hope so, because otherwise dungeons are doing things weird. And like anything that gets a little bit too popular in the mainstream, it gets bastardized, right? People see a poor representation of breath play in 50 Shades of Grey, written by people who know nothing about BDSM, and then they take what they saw in the movie and they apply it secondhand, coming from people who don't know anything about it.
So it's like fourth hand.
Yeah, they do it themselves in their bedrooms. So how kids are using it today is so far removed from the context of kink and BDSM. It makes me ragging on this whole thing here not even relevant to kink shaming.
Because they're not in the community.
It's not, right? These kids, what they're doing, it has lost all ties to kink altogether. And that doesn't just mean I can rag on it freely in a podcast without technically kink shaming. It also means that it's losing the values that that community has and that puts emphasis on and values. One of the main things that includes is community. More people are watching, understanding, talking about what's happening in these very high intensity sexual situations. And that, of course, includes being able to talk about your experiences of what's happening to you. But at times that can also just mean more eyes on the situation, right? Because you got
Kinky.
you got Chuck the Cuck over there. He can come over and tap the dungeon master on the shoulder if he notices the pleasure shaves passing out during play, you know? But it's more than just that as well. As we learned in our BDSM episode, there's a high emphasis on care, specifically aftercare. Because what people like about this is they say the vulnerability. They like to feel vulnerable. It's a way to bond you with your partner. But I feel like that you're only closing that circuit if you take time to acknowledge and honor that after the fact.
Yeah. Discuss it.
Yeah. And speaking of discussion, BDSM's really big on the contracts, man. They're really big on the paperwork. They are very into explicit consent and negotiations on what's going to be happen to a person in a specific scene that they're playing. That is not the case when you're bringing your bar hookup back to your apartment and all of a sudden their hand gets a little grippy.
So many thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, and of course, the natural consequence of going through all of this is that you know the risk and you're aware of it. And the risks are intense. They are heavy. Airplay or breath play is considered by those in the community to be a very high level and a very intense level of play. And that means it requires a lot of planning, prep, communication, and safety plans.
That's interesting that the BDSM community is like, well, you got to take that seriously. And then the rest of the world is like, no, we got this.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds familiar to me, if I'm being fair. Yeah. To me, it sounds like a loaded fucking gun, right? Am I a gun person? No. Do I enjoy guns? Personally, I don't enjoy guns, but do I understand why some people enjoy guns? Why they like hunting? Why they like shooting tin cans off fences or whatever the fuck you do with a gun?
It's about right.
Yeah, I get why it's enjoyable. I can even understand how guns are a part of a way of life, right? If you're very rural, if you are into hunting, like you have to shoot the bear that's eating your goats or whatever the fuck happens out there. I don't know. Like, it's a part of your life. I can see that. Absolutely. Does that mean I think everybody on Earth should be able to just get a gun on a whim with zero training or appreciation of the tool that they have in their little trembling, quavering hands? Not at all. And it feels like in this situation, what was that? 60% of college girls are hooking up with a loaded gun in the room.
Yeah.
But now that it's just something that people think is normal, it's just consistently popping up everywhere. It can happen without any limits or any discussion in advance. Like I kept seeing that in my research of girls talking about hooking up with some guy, even if it's just making out. His hand is finding his way to their throat.
I didn't even think of that as an aspect, and a surprise choking, I hope, is gonna get a lot of guys with their noses fucking broken. Women, if somebody is putting their hand where you do not want it, Jesus fucking Christ, you just pop them in the nose. That's just pop them in the nose.
It literally creates so much confusion because a common question I saw addressed to Dr. Debbie, who does all this, is that boys and girls were asking the same question. Girls would ask, why do all boys want to choke me? And the boys would ask, why do girls like being choked? And there's just like such shame on both sides. And I also saw as a common experience where young girls, again, 15, 16, theirs is their first sexual encounter. A boy starts sexually strangling them because that's what he's seen in porn. Just like, I'm just going to ride this out. You know, if they don't, because what do you do?
What do you do? I can tell you what you do. You fucking pop him in the nose.
I know. That was what you would say. But like, not everybody feels so forward with that. And in a society where we tell women that their value derives so much from men's opinion of them.
I don't. And that's what I'm going to teach my girls.
And it's so much shame. And now there's shame about being vanilla too, like on top of it, where it's just
you don't want to be like the prude.
The prude, right?
Yeah.
The look at me, I'm Sandra D.
Yeah.
Of nowadays just means letting boys choke you while they finger you in the back of their Jetta. So, okay, we've talked a lot about our opinions of why we feel so strongly about being choked.
I'm going to try to shut up. I'm sorry.
No. But we're going to talk about why we feel this way, other than just kind of like the inherent danger or the inherent like power dynamics. Something about it just feels gross. If you can't get behind that, you like all that shit, I'm going to start to tell you why maybe you should reconsider anyways. Because while you are being strangled, you are depriving your brain of oxygen by either blocking blood or oxygen flow. Or both, because let's be real, most of the people partaking aren't practiced stranglers. They're just throwing their hand around your neck and squeezing. Even in the best situations, you can burst blood vessels in your neck, in your head, cause sore throats, stiff necks, make yourself hoarse, and of course, create bruising.
I remember in high school having to cover up my hickeys, and I cannot imagine trying to hide a strangulation bruise.
So it can leave that physical mark, but too much force can also create lasting damage to your neck. It's not like a sturdy piece of your body. And one of the ways it can do that is a condition called spontaneous cervical artery dissection, which happens if you accidentally tear your carotid artery while engaging in this activity, and that will lead to a stroke. And that's just your cardiovascular system. Now consider the organ with the highest oxygen demand. That's your brain. And when you're doing this, you're denying it oxygen in small, short bursts. And according to new research, those little cracks can add up.
Ooh, this kind of dovetails nicely with our episode, the other episode.
I was thinking that when I was reading your research. I was like, we got the same brain.
Damn straight.
Meet Dr. Keisuke Kawada, one of the key neuroscientists who raised alarm bells around the effects of football on a player's brain. Guess what he does now? That's right, he shifted his focus of study to being the long-term effects of strangulation on the brain. And that's after he talked with Dr. Debbie. She introduced the problem to him, and he was like, well, this is a problem. I'm going to study it.
Good for these two.
I love them.
Me too.
So an MRI is conducted by Dr. Kawada and his colleagues, including Dr. Debbie Hebernick, who is a co-author on some of his papers. Undergraduate women who have been repeatedly strangled show a reduction in cortical folding in the brain compared to their never strangled control group.
The prude control group.
Yeah, the prudes, us Sandra D's of the world. They also showed widespread cortical thickening and inflammation response that is associated with the elevated risk of later onset mental illness, as well as when they were tasked to complete these simple memory tasks. Their brains had to work far harder than the control group, recruiting from more regions to achieve the same level of accuracy.
Because those other brain parts were kind of dead from lack of oxygen, so they had to employ some neuroplasticity to get in some different brains. But yeah, I mean, this is just perfect. You're making women dumb and docile and open to being injured by men. This is all in the name of liberation. This is the kind of progress that I was looking forward to.
Right.
Personally.
When I took Sociology 101, this is what I had in mind. And so he took this information, and through these studies, Dr. Kawada, he cited that the damage that he's seeing from these small repeated bursts of oxygen deprivation, they have a similar effect to CTE, which is the degenerative brain disease that football players get after those repeated small brain traumas that come from the collisions or whatever the fuck you do in football.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently having sex is now the equivalent of being a linebacker.
Sounds about right.
And your brain is literally who you are. I feel like we should be wanting to protect that at all cost. if not from turning your brain to cottage cheese, to at least be happy. Who cares if we have to make it work harder? I still want to feel good about myself. Another study by Dr. Debbie found that sexual strangulation has been linked to worse mental health outcomes in women. So women who had been strangled during sex more than 5 times in the past month, they were much more likely to say that they felt sad, lonely, anxious, and depressed compared to women without a history of having that done to them.
Color me shocked. No, I'm not shocked at all.
I mean, honestly, I feel like that's a cart and a horse situation.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
That's a correlation, not a causation.
Yeah. I mean, but the underlying thing or the action, either way, whatever motivated you to do it, here you are.
And the whole time I was researching this, because I got sucked in by the memes. I thought it was going to be funny. I thought it was going to be like, ha, choking. And I didn't even get into like the cultural implications or like the gender dynamics because I didn't want to.
Because you've already done the research on sex sounds, so you have it all in the back of your brain.
I don't want to hear about male chimps coming hard or just screaming female chimps.
Yeah.
Anymore.
Yeah.
I want to continue my heterosexual marriage without feeling immense amounts of animosity towards my male partner who had no choice in being a male.
That's fair. That's an adult life choice.
So here we are. And the results are equally as dark, mind you. Because we're finding that women are trading women and men. There are men who also are being strangled. They are trading brain function and potentially quality of life in favor for somebody else's orgasm who odds are is not going to post you on their grid. That's all the ways that sexual strangulation could go wrong. That's all the ways it can go south. Unless I'm forgetting something, Laura.
I think you might be. Like, kind of the biggest one, the most important one.
Oh, shit. Yeah, death. You can die. You can literally die from this activity. And it happens. And, like, not only can you die accidentally from being strangled during sex, your partner can strangle you on purpose and then claim it was just something you guys were doing for fun in the bedroom and tell that to the entire world. Because best believe if a man says, I didn't kill her on purpose, I strangled her during sex, that story's getting picked up.
Oh, yeah.
Your friends, your family, your coworkers, everybody's going to know and they're going to blame you for being a kinky whore. Sorry, it's not the case. But that's
true.
the society that we live in.
Yeah.
And if you want any proof of that, literally go to wecan'tconsenttothis.uk. That will show you all the stories of these women who were killed by their partners, whether during sex or not during sex, and the quote-unquote sentences that these men walked away with.
I know that site. I don't remember how I found it. I think some documentary pointed it to me at some point. This was years ago. And when you texted about me, I was like, oh, I know that site. I remember I spent some time looking through it. It's been many years. I don't need to revisit it. It's fucking awful.
Tears were shed. And you're just a picture on a website who is reduced to being strangled. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
This is not the kind of topic we normally delve into, but I already did the emotional work. So I'm like, guess what?
Y'all are hearing about it, motherfuckers.
I'm writing it down on the page and I'm talking about it because I know we're two vanilla-esque-ish people and we do this taboo podcast and it's like mostly to share what we learn about something that we had not really thought about or explored a lot in life. And at times, especially when it comes to sex and kink, judgment creeps in. You know, we're human. That's what happens. And we all want the redemption arc, man. We wish every episode could be a cannibalism or a furries where we start off being like, this is weird. And then at the end, we're like, oh, I can get behind it.
I get it.
But guess
Eating
what?
dirt. I get it.
I get it, man. But guess what? That's not life. That's not life. The best we can ask for is when we start these kind of topics that we walk away with some kind of like, it is what it is. You know, like adult baby diaper lovers. I feel like maybe we came across as judgmental, but at the end of the day, they're not hurting anybody.
No.
Except for those diapers. Those diapers are being abused.
Reckon them diapers.
But you know what? That is what it is. And then you get episodes like today where you do the research and you're just like, that's bad. That's taboo for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It should be shamed. I am somebody who believes in shame being used.
I do too. There is a place for shame in our society.
Right. And the fact that enough people talk about this. Dr. Debbie, one of the most sex positive people who encourages talking to children about sex, she was even like, you might want to watch this one. This one's spooky.
Go, Dr. Debbie.
Yeah. It's just like, maybe we should feel weird about enacting physical violence on others and why that gets us off, right?
Yes,
like, we should maybe think about that and think, maybe I shouldn't come at somebody else's pain. But am I being a fuddy-duddy for that? Am I being like a square?
No,
a prude?
I certainly don't think so. Of course, this might be just like our confirmation bias feedback loop.
Hell yeah.
No,
I had one of these in a long time.
This is why I had reservations about the BDSM community. I did not nearly come down on them nearly as hard as I am for this because of all the reasons that you laid out. You know, community, communication, openness, examination.
50-year-olds just doing it for fun. I just
true.
I'm not going to knock
They're all
that.
old.
Because at least they're having orgasms. Like, good for you.
Yes. So no, I don't think so because judgment has a place in the world because you have to examine certain things. And, if you look at it and you have a good reason and you've looked at the stats about why potentially losing brain function is worth it to you, and I guess you've made your choice and that's yours. And you should be prepared to defend it because to the rest of us,
it seems
I'm not okay with it.
bonkers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not okay with it.
Man, what a world it must have been when people could just come without having to do all the extra rigmarole. You could just push the twin beds together, do it for Jesus. It just, what a world. What a world.
We can still recreate that world. I can still recreate that world.
Our brains are rotted. My brain is rotted. I can't put Pandora back in the box or vice versa.
I guess that's true.
We all live in the product of the media that we consume. But let's be real. If you're still listening at this point, you either strongly agree with us or you strongly disagree with us. So why not let us know what you're thinking, man? Tell us why you like to be strangled. Tell us why we're a bunch of prudes and hashtag vanilla losers.
I got called a prude so much in high school. I'm immune to it. I don't care. Call me vanilla. I don't give a fuck.
I'd be like, vanilla is one of my favorite flavors.
I know. I'm like ice cream. Lick me, baby. Ooh.
Yeah, it's a classic. It's a staple. And also, I have all my brain cells. But you can let us know your thoughts by sexting us at the link in the bio or by emailing us at rude@impolitesocietypodcast.com to tell us what you think.
Thank you so much. But you know what? You know what really gets us going? More than having the life almost squeezed out of us? A 5-star rating and review. Please leave us one if you enjoyed this episode. Or, I don't know, leave us a 1-star if you hated it. But you have to tell us why you hated it. I need a comment to reflect. But most importantly, I want you to share Impolite Society with those who like to learn these ugly truths that are behind our day-to-day quirks, this weird-ass society that we all created and that some of us take for granted and don't examine. Share it. Let's talk about it.
May your airways always remain clear, unless under the careful watch of a dungeon master. Stay curious, our socialites, and keep marching to the beat of your own drum. I mean, it didn't stop there.